The void above Drellin Prime was smeared with fire and dread. Blasts of ionized plasma tore across the thin defense grid, carving electric scars through the black, while the orbiting station rusted at the joints. Overstressed and overpopulated shuddered. Under every hit, its shielding flickered like a dying pulse. Inside the command nexus, General Kareth Talon stood rigid, 6-fingered hands locked behind his back, jaw clenched as the countdown to structural collapse ticked past the margin of hope. All external emplacements are offline. Came this rasping voice of Tactical Officer Raval. Hull integrity at 43%. Civilian transports are grounded, engines fried by the last barrage. Kareth didn't flinch. He couldn't afford to. Not in front of his crew. Not in front of the dozens of wide-eyed younger officers, many of whom had never seen combat outside simulators. The Zarketh horde had come faster than expected marauders for hire, bloodthirsty opportunists, and this time organized. There, crescent-shaped warships orbited the planet like vultures, weapons hot, hungry for weakness. Kareth's voice was steel. Send another request to High Command. Raval hesitated. That was our 5th. No reply. He already knew that. They were alone. Drellin Prime didn't matter to the bureaucrats. It was an old mining colony, a trade port too close to the unstable Nebula border. If it fell, the Union would send a statement, not a fleet. And Kareth would be reduced to a footnote on a warboard. The room dimmed for a second. Emergency lights kicked in. Sparks cascaded from an overloaded console behind him. Somewhere, in the civilian quarter, another bulkhead likely failed. They'd lose air. Lives without a sensor ping echoed from the operations terminal. A single blue dot blinked into the tactical display. Unidentified vessel entering system, said Raval, his voice rising in disbelief. Human signature, small, Corvette class. Kareth snapped toward him. Just one? Yes, sir. Minimal weapons, minimal crew, single occupant. It didn't make sense. Not tactically, not logically. Who would send a human in to a siege this severe? A comms officer looked up, pale. They're hailing us. Put it through. The main screen lit up with a grainy feed. A human stood on the bridge of what looked like an old Corvette, the kind used more for smuggling than strategy. His frame was lean but steady, shoulders squared beneath a worn flight jacket. One eye bore the silver gleam of synthetic reconstruction. The other was old, dark, and haunted. A scar ran from temple to cheek like a forgotten battlefield map. This is Captain Elias Rome, the man said calmly. Requesting permission to dock. Kareth's mandibles flared. Captain, are you aware you're entering a siege? We're minutes from being overrun. Roan nodded slowly. I am. That's why I'm here. Kareth blinked. Where's your backup? The human leaned slightly forward. His expression didn't change, but a faint, unsettling smile touched the corner of his mouth. You. The silence that followed hit harder than the shelling outside. General Kareth stared at the screen, uncertain whether to end the transmission or laugh. Around him, his bridge officers exchanged uneasy glances, as if trying to decipher whether the human was joking, mad or something worse. Captain Roan, Kareth said slowly, voice laced with disbelief, you misunderstand the situation. This is not a rescue mission. This is a last stand. We are surrounded by 27 Zarketh-class warships. Our fleet is days out. You will be dead before your ship reaches the station? Roan didn't blink. Then it's a good thing I didn't come here to dock. Kareth's jaw tightened. Then why are you here? To turn the tide, Roan said. And with that, the transmission ended. The general slammed his hand on the console. Where is that damn Corvette? Raval's voice came back, confused. Sir, the vessel's not approaching us. It's drifting. Minimal power signature. No weapon systems. Activated. It's positioning near the debris field on the far side of the planet. What game are you playing, human? Kareth muttered. Just then, a soft chime from the sensor operator pulled their attention. Sir, we're getting a transmission from one of our deep listening buoys. Kareth turned sharply. The buoys are offline. Zarkith disabled them days ago. Apparently not all of them. This one's been silent until now. It's relaying a direct neural code sequence. Origin matches Terran encryption. It's rerouting our station's internal diagnostics. We're being scanned. Kareth's blood ran cold. Internal diagnostics? Shut it down. Too late, Ravel hissed. He's already inside our systems? What in the void is happening? Lieutenant Venn whispered, eyes fixed on the glowing interface. Kareth ignored the panic rising. In his crew. He felt it too, pressing behind his ribs like a hand squeezing his hearts. But he held Dot, then the comms cracked open again. Roan's voice, smooth as ice. General, I need complete access to your tactical grid, comm relay, and defense schematics. Your outer turrets are obsolete, but the reactor's still good. I can work with it. You can work with it? Kareth barked. You think this is a mechanic's errand? Who are you? There was a pause. Then the feed returned Roan's face, backlit by the shifting lights of his bridge. Elias Roan, formerly of Terran Blacksaw Intel Division, retired Operative 07A, last assigned to Operation Latchkey Deep Infiltration and Asymmetric Warfare. Kareth felt something shift in the room. He heard Raval suck in breath. Latchkey? The officer said, barely audible. That was a myth. Ghost units, burned planets, no survivors. Roan didn't deny it. I'm not here to scare you, he said softly. I'm here to give you a choice. Either trust me and let me do what I came to do, or hold the line alone and watch 90,000 civilians die while waiting for a fleet that won't arrive in time. Kareth looked around the room. No one spoke. Outside, another blast rocked the station. The lights flickered again. He turned back to the screen. What exactly do you need? Your authorization code, Roan said. And 10 minutes. Kareth stared at the human's face, worn, unreadable, and terrifyingly calm. You have 5. Roan nodded. That's enough. The transmission cut. Sir, Revo asked, his voice raw, what do we do now? Kareth turned to his officers, his tone like iron. We follow orders from Captain Roan, for now. Lieutenant Venn whispered, half in awe. We just handed our entire station over to a dead man. Kareth didn't reply. Outside, beyond. The burning clouds and orbital wreckage. The lone Terran corvette floated like a forgotten relic. But inside, behind its silent hull, something was waking up. The heartbeat of Drellin Prime was no longer its reactor core, but the quiet hum inside. Elias Roan's corvette got dark, confined, and built for function over comfort. The vessel looked like a derelict miner's ship from the outside, but within, its walls whispered with repurposed intelligence. Fiber optic threads pulsed along the floor like veins. A field of semi-holographic displays hovered mid-air around Roan, updating in real-time movement, emissions, heat trails, encrypted command. Access lines. He stood in the center of it all, barely moving. One hand rested on a recessed terminal. The other lightly adjusted the interface as lines of code scrolled too fast for the untrained eye to follow. His cybernetic eye dimmed slightly with each neural interface update, syncing directly with the outpost's failing defense systems. Project Helix status? He muttered. A calm, synthetic female voice answered in his ear. Stage 1 infiltration complete. Control nodes aligned. Reactor modulation holding at 74%. No detection by Zarkit sensors. Good. His voice was barely above a breath. "Prepare for collapse pattern simulation. Make it look like the station is dying." "Yes, Captain Roan." He allowed himself a moment to lean against the console, letting the pressure pull on his leg, the artificial one. A relic of Vergen Station. That mission had taught him everything. Never rely on noise. Never let them see your hands. Make them think you're broken until they lean in close enough for the blade. He closed his eyes and saw them again, his old team. Shimmer, Dex, Cole. Gone now. Lost to a war that the galaxy didn't even remember. That's how humans fought now, not with brute strength, not anymore. That was how they used to fight, when they still believed in fair wars. Now, they believed in victory. And Roan? He was the sharpened end of that belief. Back on Kepler Station, General Kareth paced in silence, mandibles tight with suppressed tension. The bridge was dimmer now, lit by emergency lighting and the occasional flicker of failing bulkhead panels. On the displays, the Zarkith fleet circled like sharks drawn to blood. Their signals were growing bolder. Their ships were inching closer. Still no word from High Command? Kareth asked, though he already knew the answer. Raval shook his head grimly. "They've gone dark, or they're ignoring us." Kareth's gaze fell on Lieutenant Venn, who was quietly staring at a side console Roan had linked into. The young officer's eyes darted over unfamiliar data. "Sir," Venn said slowly, "I think he's mapping their firing arcs. Not just the outer perimeter, he's calculating angle redundancies, shield overlaps, and... Wait, he's not planning a counterattack." Kareth moved beside him. "Then what?" Venn's throat bobbed. "He's planning to invite one." The words hit the bridge like a dropped blade. Before Kareth could respond, the station's intercom activated. "General," Roan's voice came through, calm, clear, and unwavering. "I need you to issue a general evacuation warning for Sector Gamma 7. It won't be hit, but they need to think it will." Kareth's tone was flat. "You're baiting them." "Exactly," Roan replied. "We're going to look vulnerable, broken. The Zarkith operate on blood instinct. They'll come in fast, hoping for a clean kill. That's when we pin their forward fleet inside their own formation and jam their exit vectors." Kareth exhaled. Slowly. "You're not giving them a battle. You're giving them a trap." "No, General," Roan said. "I'm giving them the illusion of dominance." "You're going to give them the fall." Far above the station, the Zarkith command vessel flared brighter as it adjusted orbit. Inside, Predator minds watched their prey spiral toward chaos. The station's lights dimmed. Shields collapsed in key areas. Power spikes suggested failing. Systems. A perfect target. The Horde began to move in. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that the dead station still had teeth. And the ghost inside that Corvette? He was sharpening them. The first Zarkith boarding spike hit the outer hull of Drellin Prime with a thunderous clang, like a war drum sounding across vacuum. From the inside, it looked like chaos had finally taken root. Sirens blared. The power grid crackled and failed in half the station. Civilians screamed in the corridors as shadows flickered against red emergency lights. In command, the smell of ozone and coolant filled the air. Systems were going dark. Displays were losing sync. And in the middle of it all, General Kareth stood, jaw rigid, while the crew teetered on the edge of panic. "Multiple hull breaches in Sector Gamma," Raval shouted, slamming his fist against a flickering console. "2 boarding parties confirmed. 1 more docking attempt near the lower maintenance ring." "They're buying the bait, Lieutenant," Venn whispered, wide-eyed. Kareth's gaze snapped to the feed from the outer sensors. The Zarkith Horde was advancing fast. More ships were detaching from the main battle line. Their formations were growing sloppy, their flanks thinning. They believed the outpost was on its last breath. And that was exactly what Roan wanted. Kareth touched the comb. "Roan, they're boarding." Roan's voice crackled through. The feed serene. "Let them." "Let them?" Kareth snarled. "They'll tear the station apart." "Only if we let them reach anything worth tearing," Roan replied. "Sector Gamma's already empty. I routed power into old ducts and faked radiation leaks. What they're breaching is a metal coffin." There was silence on the bridge. Kareth turned slowly to Ven. Did he say a coffin?" Ven gulped. "Yes, sir." Outside, the Zarkith boarding craft shuddered as they forced entry into what looked like a vulnerable civilian sector. Their atmosphere locks hissed open. Dozens of armored mercenaries stormed into the smoke-filled halls of Drellin Prime, fangs bared, weapons raised, and found nothing. Only rows of sealed doors, blackened walls, and a glowing red countdown embedded in the floor. 004003. "Move! It's a trap!" their lead screamed. But it was already too late. The blast wasn't loud. It was silent, a kinetic pulse that rippled inward rather than outward. Rome had rigged a collapse detonation, a pressure void, implosion that snapped gravity fields, just enough to crumple the boarding craft and breach teams without damaging the station's frame. From orbit, it looked like a section of the station simply folded into itself. The Zarkith fleet paused. Sensors blinked in confusion. The data didn't match a reactor meltdown. It looked calculated, controlled. Kareth stared at the screen. What the hell kind of tech was that? Roan's voice answered quietly. Terran black cell tech. Developed after the siege of Juno. We call it a collapse kill box. Not elegant, but effective. Are we next? Raval asked under his breath, only half joking. No, Kareth said softly, not taking his eyes off the screen. We're not the enemy. In his Corvette, Roan stood motionless. The countdown sequence faded from his main display. The sensors showed Zarkith fleet movements halting, second-guessing, reacting. Roan spoke aloud, more to himself than to his AI. They're starting to feel. That's good. Fear clouds tactics, the AI responded. Phase 2 protocols ready. Signal interference aligned. Shall I activate the ghost grid? Roan nodded. Do it. Let's give them something to chase. Suddenly, multiple signals burst from Drellin Prime Phantom distress beacons, emergency flares, falsified reactor surges, and fake power signatures. The outpost looked like it was tearing itself apart from 20 different locations. To the Zarkith, it appeared as if the station was malfunctioning catastrophically, on the verge of total failure, but somehow still alive, like a wounded beast lashing in every direction. Dozens of Zarkith warships scrambled to adjust. Some moved to intercept false escape pods. Others prepared for a final strike on what they thought was the real core. But they had no idea where Roan actually was. No idea that the debris field outside the station, the one they'd ignored, was laced with invisible drones, silently drifting among the rocks. And no idea that the real strike hadn't even started yet. On the command deck, Kareth watched. The Zarkith horde falter for the first time. Their cohesion broke. Their signals grew frantic. He looked at Ven. They're confused. Ven nodded. They're not predators anymore. They're prey. Kareth's voice was hushed. By the stars? What kind of war do you humans fight? The cum cracked alive one last time that cycle. Roan's voice quiet but firm. The kind you don't see coming. Until it's already over. The Zarkith command ship, Bloodwake Sovereign, sat like a blade above Drellin Prime, its spiked hull glistening with residual heat from orbital cannon discharges. Inside its core chamber, Warlord Garsak clawed at the tactical display, his claws leaving deep gouges in the hardened obsidian table. Why? Is the prey still alive? He growled, mandibles grinding with fury. Why do we not have their core? The bridge crackled with static as one of his lieutenants replied, Our scans are inconsistent. Power signatures shift. Internal gravity. Surges and collapses. The station appears unstable yet operational. We lost 12 boarding parties, 3 support vessels, and now the outpost emits conflicting distress codes from every quadrant. Garziak's eyes narrowed. They are flailing. Dying creatures thrash. They have no leader, no plan. Press the attack. Another voice cut across the chamber, this time uncertain. There are whispers among the crew, Warlord. That something else is here, that the humans have returned. Not armies, ghosts. Garziak froze. Then his laughter, low and rumbling, filled the command deck. Ghosts? Humans don't haunt space. They bleed like the rest of us. Ready the main cannon. Aim at their heart. Back aboard the corvette, Elias Rohn watched the enemy prepare to strike. His fingers danced across the neural-linked console. A web of colored threads stretched before him, movement vectors, pulse patterns, false thermal trails. He didn't look like a captain anymore. He looked like a conductor standing before a symphony of war. The AI whispered in his ear, They are targeting the command core. Let them, Rowan said. Inside Kepler Station's command center, General Kareth shouted over the chaos. Captain Rowan, their main cannon is powering up. That will cut through us in seconds. We have to counterfire now. No, came Rowan's reply. Calm. Absolute. Are you mad? Kareth snapped. This isn't the time for subtlety. We need to strike before. They expect a reaction, Rowan interrupted. They want you to fire. They want confirmation of your real command center. Kareth hesitated, stunned. So what do? We vanish. What? I've rerouted the outpost's power grid through a mirror relay. For the next 3 minutes, they'll be firing at an illusion. Your real core won't even flicker. Kareth looked at Ven, who stared in awe at the live feed. Sir, the power readouts. They're fluctuating so fast. It looks like we've already been hit. It's a shadow pulse. Kareth stepped back, shaken. And when they fire? Rowan's voice dropped to a whisper. That's when we erase them. Bloodwake Sovereign's main cannon surged with blistering red energy. The Zarketh warlord gave the final order. Fire. A beam of plasma, the size of a transport ship, roared the heart of Drellin, primed toward the false signature. Rowan had carefully sculpted within a ring of stealth mines and kinetic traps. As the beam struck its target, it triggered a radiant feedback loop, just as Rowan had planned. Sensors inside the Zarketh. Fleet overloaded. Command. Signals collapsed. And then everything exploded. The cloaked field of kinetic drones hidden in the debris dozens of stealth delivered. Terran mines detonated. Simultaneously. They weren't ordinary weapons. They were disruptor core bombs, tuned to the plasma resonance of the Zarketh cannon itself. In one breathless instant, the Bloodwake Sovereign's cannon backfired, tearing a hole through its own midsection. Secondary ships caught in the blast. Waves spiraled out of formation. Systems fried. A third of the Zarketh fleet simply vanished in flame. On the station bridge, silence reigned. No one moved. No one spoke. The screen showed the carnage and cold detail chunks of the enemy. Flagship drifting through space like shattered glass. Fires. Scattered escape pods. Static. Then a slow breath from Kareth. He knew, the general murmured. He knew they'd fire. He wanted them to. Rowan's voice came through the intercom once more, level and quiet as ever. They broke their formation. They exposed their flagship. That was the plan. Raval whispered, stunned. That wasn't a counterattack. It was a suicide feint. No, Kareth said, his voice strangely reverent. It was a lesson. He turned toward the display, where the remnants of the horde were now in full retreat. Scattering in disarray, Dot and Kareth finally understood. The humans weren't here to fight fair. They came to rewrite the battle, while their enemy still thought it had begun. The wreckage of the Bloodwake Sovereign burned in silence, its twisted hull casting long shadows across the void, like the skeleton of a mythic beast. The Zarkith fleet, what remained of it, had fractured. Their formations were gone, their bravado shattered. What was once a hammer poised to crush Drellin Prime had become a swarm of disoriented fragments, scattering in every direction. Inside the command center, no one spoke. Not Kareth, not Ravo, not Ven. They simply watched as a single Terran operative, drifting in what appeared to be a disabled corvette, conducted a symphony of ruin with nothing but trap codes, timed misdirection, and silent weapons seeded days. Before the enemy ever arrived, Kareth leaned over the console, his voice barely a whisper. "Is this over?" Roan's voice came through the bridge like a phantom from behind the stars. "Not yet. Their leader is still alive." "Garzak?" Raval said sharply. "He survived that explosion?" Roan's tone was cold now. "Zarkith command ships are compartmentalized. It'd take a planet cracker to kill him outright. But he's wounded, angry, and most of all afraid. That makes him dangerous." "And what's the play?" Kareth asked. "We strike now?" "No," Roan replied. "We wait. Fear will pull him out. Desperation makes fools of warlords. When he runs, I'll be waiting." Far beyond the shattered fleet, a single limping vessel began drifting toward the far edge of the system. The last operational piece of the Sovereign's hull, its core engine sputtered like a dying heart. Inside, Warlord Garzik raged around him. His command chamber was bathed in red emergency lights stuttering, consoles dead or flickering. His inner guard had been reduced to 3, all scorched and silent, waiting for his command. Blood dripped from his chin. His breathing was ragged. He stared at the cracked holoscreen, at the image of Drellin Prime still intact, still burning with life. They were nothing, he rasped. A broken station, no fleet, just him. His claws curled against the command chair. The human, he had heard of them. Whispered stories from mercs who'd survived Terran encounters. Tales of shadow warfare, of soldiers who moved like ghosts and disappeared like smoke. Of battles won before they began, but he had never believed them, until now. Roan watched the warlord signal like a hunter, watching a wounded beast limp into a clearing. "Prepare Phase 3, he said to his ship's AI. "Targeting beacon?" "Acquired," the AI replied. "Shall I intercept with drones?" Roan paused. "No, I want to talk to him." "Audio channel?" "Visual." On Garzu's screen, static gave way to an image that made his blood boil. The human, standing in. The dark, hands folded behind his back, face unreadable. "You," Garzak growled. "You did this." "No," Roan said calmly. "You did this." "I just arranged the mirror." The warlord lunged forward. "What kind of coward hides behind minds and phantoms?" Roan's expression didn't change. "The kind that doesn't. Waste life proving a point." Garzak snarled. "Kill me then. Prove you're not just shadows and tricks." Roan tilted his head. "Oh no, Garzak, that's not the point." He leaned closer, his cybernetic eye flickering. "The point is that everyone else is watching." Garzak froze. Roan's signal expanded. Behind him, dozens of screens lit up broadcast relays, Union diplomatic lines, Outer Rim observer stations. Everything had been recorded. The Zarkith slaughter, the failed invasion, the implosion of their fleet, all of it. And now the entire galaxy would see that a warlord was bested not by armies, but by one crippled human and a dying station he refused to abandon. "You see," Roan continued softly, "you were never the message. I was back on the command deck. Kareth saw. The transmission, too. The realization struck like thunder. Roan hadn't just saved Drellin Prime. He had weaponized the defeat. This wasn't just a counterstrike. It was a warning broadcast, not to the Zarketh, but to every warlord empire and opportunist watching. From the shadows, a message loud and clear. Humanity doesn't send fleets anymore. They send someone worse. The galaxy held its breath. News of the failed siege of Drellin Prime spread like plasma fire through neural networks, diplomatic channels, pirate forums, and warlord briefings. Not a day had passed, and already the narrative had shifted from strategic Zarketh strike to humiliation of the Horde by one Terran operative. The footage leaked intentionally by Roan's relay web showed it all. The fake reactor surges, the kinetic kill zone, the imploding command ship. And finally, Warlord Garzak, shaking and bloodied, watching a human calmly tell him, "You were never the message." I was in the outer sectors. Recruiting stations went quiet in political chambers. Old enemies of Earth paused and recalculated. On the bridge of Drellin Prime, General Kareth stood watching the debris field spin in slow orbits. The battlefield had gone silent, but his mind hadn't. For the first time in his career, he was left not wondering how they survived, but what exactly had saved them. Roan hadn't spoken in hours. His corvette remained motionless, dark, drifting with only faint energy pulses suggesting life aboard. No commands. No post-operation debrief. Just silence. Kareth activated a secure line. Roan status report. A beat passed. Then the channel opened. "Still here," came the human's voice, distant and tired. "You disappeared off comms. We thought you were dead." "I've been dead before," Roan said softly. "Didn't like it." Kareth allowed himself the faintest exhale of amusement. "What now? Do we expect retaliation?" "Not from them," Roan replied. Garzi-Chi's empire is splintering already. The mercs follow strength, not ghosts. And the rest of the galaxy? A pause. They heard us. In the background of Roan's ship, the AI synthetic voice cut in. "Captain, long-range intercepts confirm Union High Command has requested full briefing. You've been flagged for strategic commendation, citation level Prime Earths. Highest wartime honor." Roan didn't react. "I don't want their medals," he said. Kareth frowned. "Then what do you want?" Roan's voice dropped lower, laced with something Kareth hadn't heard before. Sorrow. "I want the galaxy to stop needing people like me." Kareth said nothing, because he understood now. Elias Roan hadn't come to Drellin Prime to be a hero. He came because no one else would. He came because Earth didn't send battalions anymore, not when it could send a scar that walked like a man. Later that day, the outpost lights slowly powered back on. Civilian sections were restored. The wounded retreated. The dead were honored. Kareth stood with Ven on the upper observation deck, watching Roan's ship rotate silently, its black hull catching the last rays of Drellin's pale sun. Ven finally asked, "Do you think he'll stay?" Kareth shook his head. "No, men like that don't settle. They drift. They wait for the next breach." "Should we try to stop him?" The general smiled, slow and sad. "Would you try to cage a lightning storm?" Inside the corvette, Roan sat in the dark. The hum of systems around him was comforting like the heartbeat of a ghost still pretending. "To be alive." The AI spoke gently. "Course, Captain?" Roan stared at the empty stars ahead. Nowhere. Another pause. Then, everywhere. The ship pulsed once and vanished into warp. And on 100 worlds, warlords paused their sieges. Pirate lords canceled raids. Political factions withdrew covert plans because the footage had gone viral. and the phrase that echoed louder than any explosion wasn't from a Terran fleet. It was from a lone, limping man in an old Corvette. "Where's your backup?" "You." And that was all it took to remind the galaxy the deadliest thing Earth ever built was a human with nothing left to lose. ChatGPT said the stars watched in silence. Somewhere beyond the known systems, where the political maps blurred into myth and navigation relied on instinct more than coordinates, Elias Rohn drifted in the quiet of slipspace. No coordinates, no mission, just him. And the echo of what he'd done. Drellin Prime was safe. For now. But Rohn knew how empires worked. They'd forget. Not all at once, but piece by piece. The way they always did. The way they had when Earth fell silent after the Emberline conflict. The way they'd done when Terran fleets stopped attending council votes and instead began operating in shadows. This was the cost of survival in the galaxy, to become something the galaxy feared to forget. Back on Drellin Prime, General Kareth stood at a podium inside the reconstructed civilian forum, broadcasting live across multiple Union channels. He wore his full regalia, his armor polished, his voice steady. "We stood on the edge of extinction," he said. "Not because our enemy was greater, but because our leaders assumed help would come from elsewhere." He paused, letting the words sink in. But help did come. Not from a fleet, not from a government. From one human, one man, a name many of you now know, Captain Elias Rohn. Applause echoed through the chambers, but Kareth raised a hand, quieting them. Rohn did not ask for our thanks. He did not stay to accept medals. He did not leave us blueprints or demand our loyalty. What he left us ... was a question. He stepped back and turned to the massive display screen behind him. A still image lingered there, grainy but powerful. Rohn's scarred face staring, calmly from his Corvette's bridge, just before the trap was sprung. Kareth looked back at the audience. "The question is simple. Next time the enemy comes ... He let the silence hang for a beat. "Will we wait for someone like him or become him?" The speech went viral across Union space. On a manufacturing moon in Sector 12, a teenage technician rewound Rohn's battle footage 10 times, studying every movement. On a station orbiting a mining planet, a disillusioned former soldier pulled his old gear from storage and powered up his armor for the first time in years. On Earth, silent, sovereign, always watching intelligence networks tagged the surge in Rohn-related activity with one phrase: category Echo Rebirth. A ripple had started, one not of war, but of memory. And nothing in the galaxy feared memory more than those who built their empires on the assumption that Earth had grown soft. In deep space, Elias Rohn received the encrypted message through his Corvette's sublight relay. He didn't move as it played Kareth's voice, calm and clear, delivering the speech. The praise, the question. He closed his eyes. "Becoming me," he whispered. "I wouldn't wish that on anyone." Then he stood. He approached the console, not as a soldier, not as a hero, but as a man still haunted by the cost of every victory. "New assignment?" the AI asked. "No," he said. "Just ... make sure the next beacon's seated right. Let them think I'm everywhere. And in the systems beyond the reach of laws, in the fringe where warlords bred in fear, ruled, the stories spread. He doesn't fight for Earth anymore. He fights for balance. He doesn't bring fleets. He breaks them. He doesn't kill to win. He wins so he doesn't have to kill again." And whispered, always whispered, came the warning. If a human ever arrives alone, you're already surrounded.